When I started doing research for this video, I honestly got a bit surprised when I realized that the novel Fight Club was categorized as satire. It seems a bit silly now, but that was honestly never the impression that I got from watching the movie as a teenager. And even now, as I rewatched the movie all these years later. At first, I thought that this was just a minor curiosity. But the more I thought about it, I realized that this probably is one of the biggest differences between the book Fight Club and its 1999 movie adaptation. Even if they both portray the same basic story, the book is written as satire and the movie behaves like it did not understand the joke. Which makes the movie more and more absurd the more I think about it. Now, I still really like the movie. And I don't want to sound like one of those the book is always better kind of guy. But that little detail means that you are getting a completely different experience by watching the movie compared to reading the novel. Even if they are telling almost exactly the same story on paper. With that being said, Fight Club is...
The first rule of Fight Club is, you do not talk about Fight Club.
Well, okay, I get that. But I mean, I've written this whole thing. If I'm not allowed to talk about it, then...
The second rule of Fight Club is, you do not talk about...
Okay. Jeez. No, do you know what? Most of these people have been breaking rules. So, you know what? I am going to talk about it. What are you going to do about it, huh?
Wrap around tough.
Hi. You're going to call off your rigorous investigation. You're going to publicly state that there is no underground group. Or these guys are going to take your balls.
I am currently recording this from a safe house on a secret location. The police have advised me against it, but I am determined to continue my investigation, and I'm not going to let myself be intimidated by thugs. Where was I? Yes, the difference between satire and taking yourself too seriously. Growing up, me and my friends thought that the movie was one of the coolest things ever. We totally fell for the whole concept that we were just consumers, that were just doing white-collar jobs that we hated, just so that we can get money to buy things we did not need. All while just waiting for the weekend. Now, while that is true to some extent today, just as much as it was back in 1999, I couldn't help to cringe a little bit when I rewatched the movie as research for this video. But before we get into that, I quickly want to mention some things that I honestly think the movie is doing way better than the novel. Both in the interest of fairness, but also because I genuinely still enjoy the movie despite some issues. In my opinion, Marla Singer feels a little bit unremarkable in the novel. Don't get me wrong, she's absolutely fine the way she is. And word for word, the role, or the character I should say, is almost exactly the same compared to the movie. But the costume design and Helena Carter's acting really elevates her character. And the scenes that Remaining Men just would not be the same without that mental image of the narrator being pressed against Big Bob's sweaty breasts. What can I say? Honestly, thank you for that, Meatloaf. And I hate to say it, but as a non-native speaker, reading the novel feels a little bit like being back at English class in high school. Damascus? Oh, okay. A reversible figured fabric of silk, wool, and... okay, that's not so bad.
A few moments later.
Fragrance? Okay, so it's like scent? Perfume?
Several bad puns later.
Episcopal? So, yeah. If you are a non-native speaker and have slightly traumatic memories from high school, then maybe the book isn't for you. But back to the movie, and why it perhaps is taking itself a little bit too seriously. Let us simply compare two scenes with each other. After the narrator's apartment has been blown up, in both the movie and the book, the narrator and Tyler end up drinking at a bar. In the book, that scene goes as follows. Quote, Tyler and I, we met and drank a lot of beer. And Tyler said, yes, I could move in with him, but I would have to do him a favor. That's it. And in the movie, that scene instead goes like this. I lost all my stuff, and now I don't know who I am as a person anymore. You shouldn't own any stuff, man. We should, live in the wilderness, man. Martha Stewart. Look, I have also had drunk conversations like this in bars at different points in my life. And I get that they are supposed to be drunk in the scene. But if I seriously have to be drunk to appreciate the Facebook wisdom, then... You know what? Give me a second. Hold on. Much better. Let me just rewatch that scene again. No. Still not drunk enough. Tyler, you're like that teenager with blue hair and a nose piercing that is trying to say something smart, and it just feels like, no, just shut the pie hole, do your homework, and maybe we can talk in 10 years, maybe? Probably not, who knows. Anyhow, as a side note, look at that smug face. Tyler, I like you, but you are not as smart as you think you are. But then again, if I had abs like this, I would probably be looking like that all the freaking time. Again, in the interest of fairness, to compare the book and the movie scene by scene is almost impossible. The main reason for this is that the book is written in such a stream of consciousness kind of way. It can jump from one scene to another in a matter of seconds. And that might work for the book, but it would most likely be extremely confusing to film a movie in the same way. So it's not really fair to compare scenes like this. Pieces from one scene will be juggled around to a different scene, and so on. It's just inevitable in this case. And it's not really necessarily an issue. And everything that Tyler is saying is absolutely resonating with what is being said in the book. But it does not have to be so on the nose. You know, show, don't tell. That sort of stuff. Secondly, the whole conversation at the bar is like listening to two extremes on a bell curve. The vast majority of people do not define themselves solely through the material objects that they possess. Don't get me wrong, a lot of people are overly materialistic. But what the narrator is portraying is an extreme end of the spectrum. Just as most people are not on the exact opposite side of that spectrum and would be happy to sleep under a bridge because, material possessions are bad or something. Or, to put it like this, most people would be happy to win a new car. But the same people would most likely burn the car and all their worldly possessions to the ground if it meant that their kid would not die of cancer. The extremes in the scene simply do not represent the society in the way that the movie makers want us to think. That does not mean that most people would not benefit from working less, so that they, for instance, can spend more time with their family and friends, or volunteer in the community, and so on. And we have all been there. We have all been frustrated with the daily routine, being stuck in traffic, working a job that we don't really care about. So we make jokes, we find ways to vent that frustration. Some ways are healthier than others, but once we are done, we get back up again. Because what is the alternative? You think that it is a pain to repay your student loan? Try living in a world where you have to sleep in a cave at minus 20 degrees, fighting off wolves that literally want to tear you apart. And that, to me at least, is what the novel Fight Club is all about. It is that dark joke that we make when we get angry at something at work. That big what-if scenario that we make up in our minds and then smile before we go back to what we were doing. And yes, I know that a lot of people like to romanticize the whole idea of living in the wilderness. They will say something like, "But that is what people are meant to do." But let me ask you this. How many of those people are actually doing that? Isn't that just another big what-if scenario that people make up in their minds to not have to think about their mortgage for a second? Now, before people start to scream at me, let me just start out by saying that I absolutely acknowledge that our current capitalistic system, it's not always pretty. And we have done some severe damage to the planet that we live on. But I think it is important to keep a reasonable debate. Should billionaires be taxed to the same extent as normal citizens? Absolutely. Would it be a good idea to go back to some sort of hunter-gatherer society to save the planet, even if it meant that billions of people would die? Probably not. And make no mistake, that is what would happen. And just as an example, the solution to car emissions is not to start using a horse and carriage again. It is to build better cities, so that public transport is a better option. Or, if you need to use a car, an electric vehicle. And if you are one of those people that currently are stuck at a job that you hate doing, hang in there. I'm sure that you will find something that suits you better. Just keep your eyes open, learn a skill that would be useful for the job that you are interested in. And it is probably a good idea to apply for jobs that you are not even interested in. That way, you will be much better at interviews and prepared for that moment when you have the chance to apply for the job that you really want. If you get accepted for a job that you don't want, you can always turn it down. Now, it might seem like I'm overly obsessive with this one scene, but it really does speak volumes about the different approach between the book and the movie. With that being said, it is not exactly fair to base the conclusions that I have made on one single scene. So in order to fully drive home the point that I'm trying to make, I also need to discuss the differences between how the book and the movie end. I will try to be as vague as I possibly can, but it will basically be impossible to discuss the different endings here without revealing some major plot points. So, once again, spoiler warning for the content ahead. With that out of the way, let me start by setting the stage for the ending in the movie. After the revelation that the narrator and Tyler Durden are the same person, we circle back to the beginning of the movie, where the narrator is sitting on a chair with a gun in his mouth. The narrator eventually realizes that he actually is the one that is holding the gun, and then threatens to kill himself to get rid of Tyler. Which sounds a little bit ridiculous when you put it like that, because he just had the gun in his mouth a few seconds ago, and now he puts it under his chin. But whatever. He shoots himself, but the bullet goes off to the side, and most likely shatters most of his teeth and the jaw. Which makes Tyler disappear. Which does not really make sense. Why would Tyler disappear because the narrator shoots himself in the side of his face? But I digress again. As soon as this has happened, the space monkeys drag Marla up the stairs. She is pissed at first, but completely forgets about that once she sees that the narrator is shot. And they then hold hands, looking out the window as the skyscrapers outside start to blow up. But in order to fully appreciate the situation, we need to backtrack a little bit.
Why these buildings? Why credit card companies?
If you erase the debt record, then we all go back to zero. You'll create total chaos.
Now, I won't get into a debate whether it actually makes sense to blow up the credit card companies or not. The important thing here is that the movie is trying to offer solutions. By blowing up the credit card companies, they are, in my opinion, confirming that everything that they have said about capitalism, consumerism, and so on was seriously meant. At least within the universe of the movie. And as a consequence of that, they are now blowing up the credit card companies to set things straight. It does not really matter if this is the end goal or just another step in their plan in order to create chaos and eventually bring down the entire society. The point is that this is a direct result of this. There are a lot of steps in between, but the conversation in the bar is the philosophical foundation for this. Now, the ending in the novel is different, and I am struggling to decide how much I should tell you in case you want to read it yourself. But I will say this. It does not try to provide any solutions, and you would be forgiven for thinking that it almost feels a little bit anticlimactic. But the more I thought about it, I realized that it is not even trying to provide answers. It is satire. It is that joke that we make to laugh about the confusion, the frustration that we feel sometimes in our daily lives. And with that in mind, I think it actually is a great way to end the novel. Struggling through the daily grind is perhaps not as sexy as being a revolutionary, but it is more sane, I guess. After all, there is a reason why you don't burn down your house and go and live in a cave because you got frustrated when trying to fix the sink. You just call a plumber and move on with your life. Hello? No, wait.
Hold him down.
Stephen Hawking?
You fool. We warned you. We told you what would happen if you kept spreading rumors about us. Now we are going to take your balls, like you are a dog at the vet. Ha 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 ha.
Chrysanthemums?
Martha Stewart.